Cloud computing is the on-demand delivery of IT resources via the internet, with pay-as-you-go pricing. Instead of buying, owning, and maintaining physical data centers and servers, you can access technology services such as computing power, storage, and databases on an as-needed basis from a cloud provider like Amazon Web Services. Organizations of every type, size, and industry are using the cloud for a wide variety of use cases, such as data backup, disaster recovery, email, virtual desktops, software development and testing, big data analytics, and customer-facing web applications. For example, healthcare companies are using the cloud to develop more personalized treatments for patients. Financial services companies are using the cloud to power real-time fraud detection and prevention. And video game makers are using the cloud to deliver online games to millions of players around the world. With cloud computing, your business can become more agile, reduce costs, instantly scale, and deploy globally in minutes. Cloud computing gives you instant access to a broad range of technologies so you can innovate faster and build nearly anything you can imagine. From infrastructure services such as compute, storage, and databases, to Internet of Things, machine learning, data analytics, and much more. You can deploy technology services in a matter of minutes and get from idea to implementation several orders of magnitude faster than before. This gives you the freedom to experiment and test new ideas to differentiate customer experiences and transform your business, such as adding machine learning and intelligence to your applications in order to personalize experiences for your customers and improve their engagement. You don't need to make large upfront investments in hardware and overpay for capacity you don't use. Instead, you can trade capital expense for variable expense and only pay for IT as you consume it. With cloud computing, you access resources from the cloud in real time, as they're needed. You can scale these resources up and down to grow or shrink capacity instantly as your business needs change. Cloud computing also makes it easy to expand to new regions and deploy globally in minutes. For example, Amazon Web Services has infrastructure all over the world, so you're able to deploy your application in multiple physical locations in just a few clicks. Putting applications in closer proximity to end users reduces latency and improves their experience. No matter your location, size, or industry, the cloud frees you from managing infrastructure and data centers so you can focus on what matters most to your business. Cloud computing is the on-demand delivery of IT resources via the internet, with pay-as-you-go pricing. Instead of buying, owning, and maintaining physical data centers and servers, you can access technology services such as computing power, storage, and databases on an as-needed basis from a cloud provider like Amazon Web Services. Organizations of every type, size, and industry are using the cloud for a wide variety of use cases, such as data backup, disaster recovery, email, virtual desktops, software development and testing, big data analytics, and customer-facing web applications. For example, healthcare companies are using the cloud to develop more personalized treatments for patients. Financial services companies are using the cloud to power real-time fraud detection and prevention. And video game makers are using the cloud to deliver online games to millions of players around the world. With cloud computing, your business can become more agile, reduce costs, instantly scale, and deploy globally in minutes. Cloud computing gives you instant access to a broad range of technologies so you can innovate faster and build nearly anything you can imagine. From infrastructure services such as compute, storage, and databases, to Internet of Things, machine learning, data analytics, and much more. You can deploy technology services in a matter of minutes and get from idea to implementation several orders of magnitude faster than before. This gives you the freedom to experiment and test new ideas to differentiate customer experiences and transform your business, such as adding machine learning and intelligence to your applications in order to personalize experiences for your customers and improve their engagement. You don't need to make large upfront investments in hardware and overpay for capacity you don't use. Instead, you can trade capital expense for variable expense and only pay for IT as you consume it. With cloud computing, you access resources from the cloud in real time, as they're needed. You can scale these resources up and down to grow or shrink capacity instantly as your business needs change. Cloud computing also makes it easy to expand to new regions and deploy globally in minutes. For example, Amazon Web Services has infrastructure all over the world, so you're able to deploy your application in multiple physical locations in just a few clicks. Putting applications in closer proximity to end users reduces latency and improves their experience. No matter your location, size, or industry, the cloud frees you from managing infrastructure and data centers so you can focus on what matters most to your business.
Hello, great day to everyone. I'm Adicito de Guzman, the community lead of PWA Pilipinas, and I'm joined by. Ay, yeah. Wait. Can you hear me? Wait. Wait. Oh, guess I need to. Can you hear me now? Okay. Anyway, I'll try moving to another device. But yeah, before we start our program, I'll be introducing our organization first. Okay. So okay, sorry. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, so what's PWA Pilipinas? Well, we are a community for makers, designers, and users of progressive web apps here in the country, here in the Philippines, to be specific. Um, our mission is to introduce and nurture progressive web apps adoption in the Philippines and beyond by fostering a community for subject matter experts, enthusiasts, adopters, and developers of the platform, and by providing resources and engagement just like this to stimulate interest in progressive web apps. So, our vision is that progressive web apps would be adopted widely here in the Philippines. But wait, what's that progressive web app I'm talking about? Well, progressive web apps are web applications, but are supercharged with native app-like functionalities like the ability to be installed, work offline, and more across all devices and different form factors. So, with that, thank you for being with us for the past 2 amazing years, and we hope that you would join PWA Pilipinas in our future events. Okay. I thought I I thought my mic wasn't working. Can you hear me now, Michael?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
can
okay. Yeah. So, pakilala ka naman or like
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Michael Lance and I'm here at Pidabay Pilipinas to listen and to learn more about progressive web apps. So join us in this session.
so this is the in continuation with our different talks for August. So recently we had different topics from different speakers um, last last few weeks. And for this week, we have the advance. So this is the first topic. We will have Maxim, which will be discussing on how we can automate a service worker with Workbox 6, and we have more. So make sure to visit our Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all our social media um, accounts for updates. And we also have Discord. If you have questions for our speaker or shout outs, make sure to join that as well. And if you won't be able to catch this or our past events, you can still watch them on our PWA Pilipinas app. It's available by visiting app.pwapilipinas.org. It's also on Google Play and the Microsoft Store. So yeah, and yeah, we're on Facebook, Twitter as well, and on LinkedIn and Instagram and everywhere. Okay, so before let's now add our speaker to the stage, but I'll be introducing him for first. Okay, so our speaker is Maxim Sannikov. He is an Oslo-based cloud and tech community geek. He is a web dev maestro who builds apps since the end of the last century and shares his extensive web platform experience by speaking and training at developer events around the world. Daytime, Maxim is boosting cloud skills at the country scale by leading developer engagement in Microsoft Norway. In the evenings, you'll find him organizing the country's main web and mobile meetups and 2 full-scale tech conferences. So, welcome to the Philippines, Sir Maxim.
Hello, dear friends. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the invitation. It's a huge pleasure to present for your awesome community. And your community is one of very few communities on the planet dedicated to PWA, like community which has PWA in its name. I appreciate this. I run a similar community here in Norway. There is a community dedicated to PWA in London, and maybe you are the third, yeah, in the whole planet. So I'm super happy that there is such a community in Philippines where we have lots of awesome developers. So yeah, I'm super happy.
Yeah, we're also happy to have you here. We're really, really happy since it's really hard to find a great time slot for our international speakers. And actually, the pandemic has allowed us to bring experts just like you here to our local community. So thank you for accepting our invite.
It's my pleasure. And folks, after this COVID goes away, let's plan my in-person appearance in Philippines, speaking for your audience. I'm super happy to travel to your place to deliver session in person. Can't wait when it becomes possible.
Sure, we'll definitely work on that once we could. Okay, so I guess you can start with the topic. It's really interesting since many developers wanted to learn how can they make their web apps work offline, right?
Yes, let's start. Okay, so tonight, I believe it's quite a late evening in the Philippines, right? We'll be talking about progressive web apps using Workbox version 6 in particular. And it basically all about how to improve the web application itself. So how to delight our dear users, clients, customers. And at the same time, we definitely want to get satisfaction as developers. So we want to keep great developer experience while we build progressive web applications. I was already introduced by the Meetup team, but just super briefly about me. I'm a big fan of developer communities, yes, and I run meetups, I run conferences, and also by the end of the session, I will introduce one more event I co-organize, which is fully dedicated to PWA, but let's wait a bit with this. Let's stay connected on Twitter. WebMaxRU is my Twitter handle. I tweet mainly about progressive web apps, about web platform, and about web technologies in the cloud. Our today's agenda will start with very brief motivation discussion about why do we ever need progressive web apps. But yeah, I expect that you as a community dedicated to PWA, definitely you are not strangers in this area, so we'll keep this very short, and let's have it data driven. So I will introduce some numbers, and we'll dedicate the rest of the session to actually building PWAs. So we'll have a look at the manual way to do this. We'll understand what kind of challenge we could expect if we go this way, and of course how to automate this. And by the end of the session, I will share some useful resources. First, what's happening with progressive web apps idea in general? What are the latest news around this? Maybe the news from last 6 months. Well, it's always like a roller coaster. Some news about PWA are very inspiring and exciting. Some news are not that promising. And let's start from the latter. For example, folks who develop a browser called Firefox, folks from Mozilla, announced that they will not support PWAs anymore. But let's be very precise on this statement. They just stated that they will not support installability features in Firefox browser. So Service Worker API and its sub APIs remains untouched, and of course they actively develop this. Well, it's definitely not a super cool news. news, but to be honest, I personally never tested this feature in Firefox because it was hidden behind the flag. Maybe it didn't work well enough, and they just decided to remove this feature for now. On a good side, now we can monetize our PWAs using Google Play Store. Of course, we need to wrap our web application into the native, very thin wrapper. It's absolutely possible, doable, with nice developer experience using the special tool called Bubble Wrap, developed by Googlers. And then you can use APIs from Google Play called digital goods selling or something like this. That means that you can sell, for example, subscriptions to some services within your application. Well, it will be not 100% like web application, because this will be a native one, but in the core, in the heart of this app, definitely there will be web technologies. And again, the wrapper you have to create is very thin. On the bad side, again, on the recent dev conference, folks from Apple announced that they are not going to implement some APIs, some web APIs, mainly dedicated to hardware features. Why? Because they open possibilities for fingerprinting. So they open possibilities for, let's say, misusage of digital profiles of the people. So it somehow breaks privacy. Well, we'll not argue with folks from Apple, from Safari team. They definitely know the situation. How to live with this, a bit later on that. And good news from Microsoft. My dear colleagues announced that propagating your PWA to Microsoft Store is even simpler now. Yeah, why go far for the example? PWA Pilipinas app is on Microsoft Store, if I understand correctly, as your dear organizers announced. Well, with all these ups and downs, I have total feeling that web as a platform was forked. And some browser vendors, and of course we cannot reason about web platform without discussion about web browser developers, right? So some vendors went to the privacy, some decided to implement more and more functionality, maybe with some compromise on privacy. Again, this is a discussion, privacy versus functionality, definitely beyond our today's topics, and every company has its own view on that. How to survive in this landscape as a developer? Well, I have an answer for you. Let's just follow web standards, and everything that I will explain here and after is part of web standards, at least as a draft of web standards. And for non-supported features, we can always use progressive enhancement idea. And basically, this is the core of building progressive web applications. If we look closer at PWA as ecosystem. Well, now these days it's a very good idea to split everything we have under PWA umbrella into two large parts. Something about installability, having our applications, our web applications, web front-end applications to be precise, as a first-class citizens on a particular operating system, on a particular platform. This is number one. And number two, capabilities. And in that sense, it's super wide range of the capabilities, including, of course, communication with the device hardware features. As a part of overall PWA API ecosystem, the significant part is service worker. Service worker is quite extensive API. It has lots of, let's call them sub-APIs. And a significant part of what's included in service worker functionality is dedicated to networking. And exactly on this level, our today's superstar is working, called Workbox, library called Workbox. we'll dedicate enough minutes in our technical talk today. Significant part of the network optimization is dedicated to caching. So this is I call this onion of PWA, and we'll reason mainly about smart caching tonight. I promised you some numbers, right? How to convince your boss to build PWA instead of regular web application, or PWA instead of mobile application. Let's check the adoption level. First, if we check stats from HTTP archive, and they have sample of around 7 million web pages. Of course, this is not whole internet, but quite a good sample. We'll see that around 1% of the pages are controlled by service worker these days. And you see it's quite steadily growing. Looking at this chart, it doesn't look like it's on a plateau yet, and definitely not decreasing. Well, maybe this number is not super inspiring, right? Just 1%. What if I tell you that this 1% of the pages controlled by service worker controls around 1/5 of the overall traffic? Because we have this chart which shows us page loads, and well, this number is quite significant. So we can say that around 1/5 of the internet of this sample is served by service workers in terms of page loads. And that means that, for example, quite a large companies with quite popular resources are adopting service worker technology. Why do they do this? Well, the answer is very simple. They build way friendlier solutions for their customers, for their clients, for us as consumers of their services. And if we talk about one specific part of what service worker can do, and a very small part of what PWA can do in general, it's about offline readiness of your application. And here there's not so much to invent if we compare what we want to achieve with what we have as an experience of the mobile native applications. If we look at the applications on our mobile devices, well, once we installed particular app from the store, it's always available, right? We don't care about connection status. We just hit the icon and the application loads. A majority of these applications and the applications we build on web consume data, some kind of data, APIs, CDNs. This is, I believe, core of functionality for, I don't know how many percent, but I believe close to 100. And the data we consume real runtime. For example, when we grab some JSON from our API, we want to have control over this as front-end developers, not as just developers, right? Because we, of course, have this old gold HTTP cache, but for us as for web front devs, it's not super convenient because we have close to zero control over this. We want to have very precise control over the data we download for smarter reusage this later in form of, for example, smart caching. If we talk about what happens with our application when there is no connection to the network, and by the way, I offer you folks to think about being connected as a privilege. So yes, definitely the cellular coverage is not it's not that good in different areas of the world, and even if we are in the office on the Wi-Fi, anything can happen, right? And the Wi-Fi could easily become a Li-Fi, which is only confusing, and there is no internet despite you are connected. Is your application ready to survive in these conditions? Of course, we are talking about use cases when you don't need you don't need to be always connected. For example, if you create some picture or you write some text, you hit post, send, whatever. What happens next if for some reason, for any reason, there is no connection? Do you take care about the data and about user experience? Yes, connection failures happen, and yeah, we cannot say that, yeah, we now build our application and we keep in mind it will be 100% of the time connected to the internet. It's not just a real world scenario. If we talk about updates, our application is evolving, and the application is evolving, APIs are evolving. What do we have here? Can we somehow provide the experience like we have, again, if you go back to the mobile native applications, which can update themselves in the background? Now it's possible for the web also. You can set a schedule of update of your application and data it consumes. And definitely, we want to use all the platform features straight from our code, from our web frontend code, from our JavaScript code, to be precise, or TypeScript, or whatever you compile to JavaScript. And with all these points, we want to keep the nature of web. It's discoverability, it's openness, it's linkability, features which are not available on any other app development, distribution, deployment platform. So if PWAs are so great, why not 100% of the new projects are following these best practices? And yeah, we can call PWA as, for example, a pattern or a best practice. Well, because it might be not that easy, and this joke from 2019 is still relevant. It easily might happen that you planned some awesome, nice functionality to be added to your application. You ended up with completely broken application, and people, your customers, reach out to you saying, why do I see the old version of the website, or I see a blank page and the red console log? Well, service workers are challenging to implement, at least when we talk about production grade quality. Why? Well, if we look on the theory of building service worker, our very own service worker, this is why I call this imaginary file a handmade service worker. We definitely will not dedicate this session to service workers 101. I assume you have some foundational knowledge there, at least at least very basics. After all, you are PWA community, right? So in theory, it all sounds quite simple, right? On install event, we put some stuff into the cache. On activate event, we manage the versions, and the fetch event is the main one where we actually provide the logic, what to take from cache, when to take from cache, and when to go to the network, and what happens if network is not available, if our resource is not in the cache. So all this logic. In lots of guides and articles and videos on the internet, you'll find example of handmade service worker with maybe around 100 lines, which implements all the core functionality. And yeah, this picture on this slide is just to somehow illustrate the volume of the number of lines you have to write to implement basics. So don't try to understand what's going on there. Yes, this will work maybe for the best case scenario for hello world use page, HTML page, but this will definitely lack all the functionality I listed on the right side in red. So no automation, it's not configurable, not extendable. We definitely can not reason about being smart in caching or fetching, and these 100 lines will not contain all the fallbacks, and all nice developer experience is missing, like very detailed debug information. Furthermore, when we push this into production, this very naive implementation of the service worker, well, many things can happen. And even more or less for a hello world scenario, we have to still think about lots of things, like these ones, maybe even more, maybe something more, and still you can get a call in the night from your customer saying, why do I see the old version, or why do I see the blank page? Service workers are challenging, but please do understand me right. I'm not saying that you don't have to ever try to implement your own service worker. I encourage you to do this. I just say that you have to invest enough time, especially for testing and debugging. But what if you want to convert your web application or create a new one as a PWA, and you need it yesterday? And you have, for example, one evening for all the experimentation and for everything. Can you get any help from the libraries, from something built by community and like professionals before? Yes, and it's not a secret that around 1/3 of all service workers deployed into production, again, it's according HTTP archive stats, are driven by one particular library called Workbox. And this is our today's hero. This is my personal top list of things I love in Workbox. It has really well architected level of abstraction. It doesn't. It definitely doesn't contain one method, like magical method saying make PWA and bam, you have everything. No, do not expect developer experience like that. At the same time, it gives you possibility to avoid super deep dive into, for example, HTTP modes, into the caching algorithms, etc. So for me, it contains very comfortable layer of abstraction. You as developer have full control of what you build, but still you have really nice helpers. To some extent, it returns declarativeness of what you do with caching to the service workers. Because if you implement service worker manually, well, it's very imperative style API. We literally have to send, to write orders, take this file, put into the cache, take this request, send it to the network, etc., etc. While in Workbox, we more describe behavior, how this particular scenario should behave. And of course, it simplifies lots of things. Plus, it's modular and extendable. It contains awesome set of functionality right out of the box, and the tooling is just amazing. At the same time, it's free, open source, and under active maintenance. And folks who maintain the repo will be happy to receive issues from your side, pull requests from your side, everything you want to share with the developers. Okay, I think it was a very good promo pitch of Workbox. Now let's try it in action. And as I promised, you have a chance to build your PWA in one evening using Workbox. Good. So if you remember this hand-made service worker containing around 100 of the lines for basic caching, for basic offline readiness of the application. In Workbox, it's just one liner, and of course import of this particular method on top. The method called precache and route. Well, after we have this very few lines in our service worker, we can make sure that we have basic functionality of offline readiness of the application itself, so-called application shell architecture. is that true that we can just go and deploy these 2 lines into production? Of course not. We have to do some extra steps before it becomes production ready. But it's a one-time operation, and once we set everything up, we just extend it without any extra movements. So, okay, what are the steps? First, if you go back to the slide, you see that we pass one parameter to pre-cache and route, which actually says, hey, Workbox, take this set of the files and pre-cache them and set the routing up. So it will serve these files from the browser cache called cache storage, and actually this is the foundation of how offline readiness is working. Definitely, we have to explain to Workbox which files exactly. It knows nothing about structure of our particular application. Okay, this is number one. Number two, since we have ES6 import, we have to do bundling. ES6 imports are supported by browsers these days, but not in service workers yet. Maybe the next version will contain this, but anyway, we want to keep service worker as small as possible, so we want to pick only particular methods we need from the overall library. And of course, to have this service worker connected with our application, or to be more precise, with our origin, we have to register this in the application. And our application is evolving, so 2 first steps we have to do on every application build. Let's start implementing these steps. First, we install a library, or let's say a module, part of Workbox ecosystem called Workbox build. And actually, it will contain it will install all other modules, so you don't need to run multiple npm installs. You just it's enough to have only this package installed. And we will use Workbox in Node.js module mode. That means we have to write some JavaScript code for doing these first 2 steps. And this JavaScript code is intended to be run on build stage. So it's definitely not something that we push into production. No. It's just for building the service worker before we deploy service worker to production. Okay, here is a sample of such build script for you. I call this swbuild.js because it builds our service worker. So what it does? First, it takes this service worker JS file we had on the previous slide. You remember these 2 lines with 1 method, pre-cache and route. And then we provide the name for destination service worker. So let's put everything into our dist folder where we keep our distribution of application, which we will deploy later. And of course, we have to provide information about application structure. So what we say here, hey, Workbox, please take our index.html, take all CSS and all JavaScript files, and consider them as application shell. So pre-cache everything what you find following these patterns. These glob patterns is very flexible, so no doubts. You will find an easy way to configure Workbox for your particular application, and it's just a few of options. It's there are many more which can make your life even better, provide even better developer experience. And what next? Next, we call method inject manifest from the package Workbox build, which actually does the dirty job of building, of iterating through these patterns, finding an exact set of the files, and injecting them into the service worker. So after this swbuild.js run, instead of our source service worker, we'll have the one in a distribution folder with all the list of with all the files listed, all the files we want to pre-cache, all the files which construct application shell of our web project. one more step, or the next step. As I announced before, we have to bundle this, bundle and minify. So to apply all the best practices we have in web front-end development to the service worker file. And it's a very good idea. I've seen too many service workers which are like just looking actually like a source code and not optimized, not minified. So let's do not follow this pattern. Let's follow all the best practices. How to bundle this? Completely up to you. So it's after all regular bundling. You can choose your favorite bundler. I, in my example, go for rollup, and it's not that complex to configure rollup to do the operations I need with our service worker. So we need a set of plugins, and how to configure them is on my next slide. Well, what I do, I use Resolve to find the corresponding files in Workbox package. Then I replace one string to another in these source files. And this way we switch the mode, production versus deployment. And as you can imagine, if we change this production string to deployment string, rollup will generate service worker which contains tons of debug information for us to follow what's going on. If we tested, debug everything, we just switch to production and we get as small service worker as possible ready for being deployed. And then using Tertial, we minify everything. So not rocket science at all. It's regular bundling. After these two operations, your service worker, your destination service worker, will look something like this. Don't try to understand what's going on here. It's minified, uglified, etc. It's for the robots. It's for the browsers. So browsers love this format, not human. And like the next natural step could be just integration of building service worker and bundling into our overall application build flow, just to make sure that we build service worker and bundle it on every application build automatically. Last step is to register this particular service worker in our application. And again, Workbox could provide really nice syntax sugar for us. Why? For example, if you want to build interactive update flow, it's a bit out of scope of our today's discussion, but in the example below, and I will share this link later, you'll find ready-to-go solution how to provide update flow like this when you want to ask visitors if they want to update their what they see on the screen to the next version if you deployed the next version. Well, now we are 100% ready to deploy what we've built. And again, in this sample on the link, you'll find example of simple blog application driven by the service worker we just created. Of course, it's a bit more like extended, but you will see what's going on my next slides. So then we can go and test. I created this animated GIF just to illustrate how to test this. You go to service worker tab, you click offline, and it works. Browser imitates, mimics offline mode. It works like we are online, and in addition, we have detailed information about debugging, and it's really nice developer experience. But everything I mentioned before was about application itself, so-called application shell architecture. And with these 2 lines of service worker and some build steps, we just make sure that application is working even in offline mode after once being opened by our user. How to optimize what happens during runtime. Service worker is our helper here also. I really love the idea how it all implemented. So we register routes. And we then explain which caching strategy to apply for this particular route. It's very declarative style and very non-demanding in terms of development. Actually, it doesn't even look like development. It looks like more configuring. Just to illustrate, just imagine we have this blog post I just demonstrated, and we have avatars. Avatars we use from third-party service called Gravatar. What kind of caching strategy could we apply here? Maybe the most conservative one. Maybe we always can try to check if this particular user picture, was cached before. Okay, then we just register route, and again using some patterns. We definitely don't need to provide any single URL here. The power of patterns is at our services, and we set the strategy. We do not implement anything here. We do not have to implement all this ping pong between network, cache, and all this logic with tons of fallbacks. What next? If we have, for example, a list of the articles, we can think, well, the list of the articles on our blog post is quite dynamic information, and maybe it's not a good idea to check cache first, so we will try our luck with the connection. Maybe it's the best fit in terms of strategy here. If there is no connection, Workbox will try luck in the cache and will serve something, at least some list of the new article for news or whatever. Maybe it's a good idea then to inform the user that this is not the latest information, but from that time. Or a bit more sophisticated scenario for one particular article or blog post. What kind of strategy could be here? Well, it could be a mix of conservative and optimistic. A strategy called stale while revalidate. What happens here? First, we ask Workbox to try the luck with cache, and if this particular article, let's say JSON, which contains all the data, is in cache, maybe this particular user on this particular device already visited this URL, and this API endpoint was triggered. So we serve this immediately. At the same time, we check if the network available. If yes, we try to reach out to this API and check if there is update. What kind of update could it be? If you talk about blog posts, maybe you've seen in some of them, people just add something like update. I found something extra if this is blog about programming. So sometimes it happens. Occasionally it happens. So it's a good idea to check if this data was updated. If yes, then Workbox downloads this data. What happens next? We can give a choice to the user. So we can inform them, hey, actually, there is some update of this content you see right now, and you decide if you wish to refresh this and get new, or you just ignore this. And this is the most flexible user experience. And as you see on the screen, it's very nice developer experience. Again, it looks like just the configuration, and it works. It's mature, it's well tested, and absolutely production ready. If we talk about strategies, 5 of them is included as in the Workbox initially, and you can definitely create your custom one. And same with the plugins. Plugins is the way to customize functionality of the Workbox, and maybe you can also create your own one if you wish to extend it, not customize, but extend. The next level of abstraction, which appeared in Workbox version 6, called recipes. And basically, these are just well-configured pieces of functionality for performing particular tasks. You can implement everything what contained in particular recipe by hands, by just using routing, by just calling particular Workbox plugins. But you can simplify this a lot by just adding one-liner to your service worker. For example, if your project contains fonts from Google Fonts service and you want to smartly cache this, you just call this recipe called Google Fonts Cache. Same for the images. If you wish to apply some common caching behavior for all images you consume in your web application, it's just one line. Same for offline fallback, same for caching the pages themselves, same for caching static resources like JavaScript and CSS files, and a bit more sophisticated strategy for warming your cache up. So to make sure that it's not just cached, but also ready to be served. Still, if even this not enough for your project, if you need something even more custom, something even more specific, can you just change how Workbox is working internally? Yes, and you don't need to rewrite it from scratch. You don't need to write service worker from scratch. You can just implement a custom strategy. And in version 6 for developers, Workbox library has really nice, let's say, helpers helping classes to implement experience like this. And of course, if you implement your custom logic in form of custom strategy, you can use both included plugins and build your own ones. Let's give a super simple test how that works. And let's implement strategy called cache network race. And this is quite maybe a bit synthetic one. Maybe you don't need this in a real world project, but who knows? You know, sometimes cache is maybe not that predictable even then compared to network. So let's implement this strategy. We take base class called strategy and we just extend it with our own strategy. We have to implement a method called underscore handle, where we pass the request itself. It's just a network request, nothing than that. And also we have instance of strategy handler class, which contains very handy methods for us to not dive too deep into the implementation of caching and fetching. How that might look. So we can implement this handle method using all goodies we receive from this handler object. First, instead of manual work with cache storage API, we use particular method implemented in Workbox. Next, instead of manual matching, we just again use another method from Workbox. And what next? We just check what came first, what kind of promise was resolved first, and deliver to the user, to the application. So it might be a bit confusing to understand which way to use Workbox. So I created this mini map for you. If you need full flexibility, you go for custom strategies. If you need to tweak current strategy, you can just implement custom plugin. It's less demanding in terms of development. The mainstream way of using Workbox is using modules and methods. It's exactly what I have in my demo in my source service worker. The next level of abstraction is recipes, when you just use well-configured pieces of Workbox code. And the most automatic way is when you can generate full service worker from corresponding CLI. Workbox also has its CLI included. But yeah, I do not even consider this as something for real world projects. It's not that flexible. let's wrap up. You'll find this demo I introduced to you. I introduced only pieces of this, but the full source code plus deployed version, so you can play with this, you can find on this link. Please check this, go through and find inspiration for building your own progressive app, for building your own Workbox-driven service worker. And let's continue the discussion about progressive web apps on Slack. I know that you have awesome Discord community for your group, but I also invite you to join the global PWA community movement, where we have more than 2,000 people, including folks who develop browsers and libraries and frameworks, including Workbox developers. On that, thank you very much. I'm open for your questions, and while dear organizers help me to understand if we have any questions, let me show you one event like I promised in the very beginning. It's the event called PWA Summit. It's full day of the sessions dedicated to, I believe, your favorite topic, if you are part of PWA community. It's online, it's free, it's co-organized by folks from different browser vendors like Microsoft, Google, Samsung Internet. Yeah, I invite you all to get your free ticket. As simple as that. We'll be super happy to see you folks on that event. That's all from my side.
First and foremost, thank you for sharing. So let's have a look at the... If you have questions, I guess they're still like a little bit overwhelmed. But do you have some shout-outs? Let's read some shout-outs first. This is from Ezekiel Arroyo, so hello, if you're watching.
Hello.
Nor Salim, hi.
Yo.
From Kenneth Agsaway, good evening.
Good evening.
It's evening
yes,
in here.
It's almost 4 p.m. in Norway, and I believe it's a bit later in your time zone if you are from Philippines.
Yeah. Also, good evening, sir, said Gabriel.
Nice to meet you, Gabriel.
Zaki as well. Good evening, sir.
Hi, Zaki.
And Tristan said thank you, Sir Maxim.
My pleasure, Tristan.
And Ezekiel Arroyo as well said thank you. So we do have questions from the team. Here's the first one. So, can SSRs benefit from Workbox and probably Service Worker in like overall?
Yes, absolutely. This is a very good question, because often when we say about web front-end applications these days, we mean single-page apps just by default, just because the majority of frameworks do experience like this, like without any extra movements from our side. Yes, you can use Workbox to also pre-cache your server-side rendering applications. And yes, there are some special techniques for this, which allow you to work with streams of the data. You can easily find a session about this from Jeff Posnick, who is actually the main creator of the Workbox, where he explains all the details about how to utilize power of Workbox for your server-side rendering application.
Okay, especially that actually there are some people that are actually confused with, like, what's the difference between an SPA and PWA? We do get a lot of questions with that. If we were to ask you, how would you explain it to?
Well, it's orthogonal terms. Single-page application is the way architect your application to work in the browser without need to generating every single URL you have in your application. While PWA is the way of thinking about making this application better in terms of user experience, and PWAs are installable and offline ready. So let's say like this: your single page application could be progressive or could be let's call them regular. So you do not choose if it SPA or PWA. They definitely can be friends.
Yeah. Actually, sometimes we're telling that it's like an umbrella. It's like there's PWA and there's like underneath it there's like different architectures.
Yep.
Okay, so there's another question. How will I communicate to users if I shipped a bad service worker? And can Workbox help me update it?
I think it refers to the joke I had on my slides. In the general scenario, you don't have to reach out to every user of your application with some calls to action. Yeah, it's just impossible, right? You don't want to call or send emails to millions of people. What you do? You deploy so-called kill switch service worker, and it's not about Workbox or other library. So your first goal is to get rid of service worker on every device and every browser of your every user, and this kill switch service worker is doing nothing but just deregisters itself. And the crucial moment here is the name of the file of this, let's say, emergency service worker should be the same as your main one. So there is no reason to deploy I don't know, SW emergency JS, something like this. No. You have to remove the old one from your deployment place and put the new one. It definitely will not happen, immediately for everyone. After all, the person who has the malfunction, the bad service worker, has to visit your page again to get updated service worker. And then you can start more or less a fresh life of your application. So, in simple words, always keep this emergency service worker or kill switch service worker somewhere deployed. Just keep it under different name, but you can always rename your main one to replace your main one with this one. And yes, luckily, according to the updated specification of Service Worker API, browsers do not cache service workers anymore using HTTP cache, because in the early ages of service workers, we have to also provide special headers on server side to make sure that browser always requests a new service worker. Now we can be more relaxed in that sense. So yes, that's the answer. Deploy either fixed service worker or this emergency one. Maybe you'll have a better. First, you can make it faster, right? And second, you can take a step back and resync your service worker experience.
I hope it was a joke, because we actually encountered that that bad service worker. So that's why I was. Yeah. So anyway, that was done. There's another question from the comments. This is from PhilIT.org. Can you explain caching strategies in Workbox?
Yes, sure. But let's do not spend time on explaining all of them. Let's take one particular strategy as an example. Let's take network first, which I introduced for the list of the articles or blog posts on my project. So just imagine, Workbox intercepts HTTP request or HTTPS request to be precise, saying something like API slash articles slash 123. What Workbox does if we asked Workbox to apply a network first strategy for this pattern? Workbox sends this request or like performs this request for the network. So what it does, fetch and this URL. If network is available, if this particular device connected to the network, Workbox fetches the data. Let's imagine this is JSON, and it passes this JSON exactly to the application. At the same time, it takes the same JSON and puts it into the cache. And it all happens completely transparent for the application, completely transparent for the user, of course. Second scenario, if the network is not available. So it's still network first strategy, right? Still, Workbox sends the request, and we can configure, for example, waiting time for how long to wait for the network to respond, or like when to consider that the network is down. Okay, network is not available. Then Workbox is trying to fetch the same data from cache. If it was pre-cached before, like for example, after the successful reach out to network, it takes this JSON from cache storage and serves to the application. And if both network is not available and there is no such resource in cache, then yeah, we are in trouble. We definitely cannot serve anything. Maybe in that sense, you can show the message to your users saying like, unfortunately, we are offline and there is nothing in was pre-cached. Like, I don't know. It's up to you how you build user experience. You can implement some online game like browsers have. In that sense. So you see, all the strategies is a real ping pong between application, network, cache, and can you implement the strategy by yourself manually? Absolutely. And you will enjoy writing this code. You will learn a lot about HTTP, all these multiple modes, multiple scenarios, opaque responses, etc., etc. You will learn a lot about how to cache things. You will learn a lot how to optimize your cache, about all these algorithms. So it's an interesting journey. It will take time. It will require some effort. Or you can just go for Workbox, say, hey, Workbox, for this pattern, use this strategy. And it just works.
Okay, so we have another question from Miguel Quintos. Hi, good evening. Is combining React.js default service worker with Workbox over engineering?
Answer is super simple. Default service worker in React.js, at least the one you create using Create React App, is Workbox. So you don't have to do anything. It contains Workbox by default. And if I remember correctly, all the configuration of Workbox exposed via Webpack configuration in this case. But it's good follow-up on this question. The method I explained to you in my presentation is applicable to absolutely any kind of application. So maybe it's the most general, the most flexible way to build your service worker. It's absolutely framework agnostic, works with React, works with Angular, Svelte, whatever, with your personal framework or without framework at all.
Okay, so yeah, if you still have questions, leave them at the comment section. Probably this would be the last if there won't be any question. This is still from the team. Will I be able to use Workbox if I don't use a bundler?
Uh, let me think about this. Yes, I think so. The method I explained is about having everything locally. So you install all the sources of Workbox library on your local machine, and then you build service worker locally, and you deploy this. But there is another way of using Workbox with using of CDN. So actually, you can use on top of your service worker, you can say import and the URL of Workbox library located somewhere on Google CDNs, and then you will have all the methods available for you. Well, this method is let's say for me it's too less control, right? So you cannot, for example, develop your service worker completely locally using this way. You need to be connected yourself as a developer. This is why it's not maybe super developer friendly. And after all, most likely your users will download the full package of Workbox using this import instead of downloading only particular methods if you build and bundle this locally. So theoretically, that's possible. Maybe it works for debugging well, but in reality, I encourage you to go for bundling.
Okay, so let's add this for the really last question. So, any use case that I would prefer to create a handmade service worker than using Workbox?
Yes, there is such a use case. If you wish to learn more about Service Worker API, about HTTP protocol, about caching, maybe this is the most realistic scenario. Other than that, I believe Service Worker covers 99% of the needs of real-world applications.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, again, I think that's it. So, once again, thank you, Sir Maxim, for sharing your your knowledge to our community.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. Great community. I really enjoyed answering questions. So very active, vibrant, amazing community. Keep on doing, folks.
How would they reach you if they would like to probably ask question or invite you for a talk?
Twitter is the simplest way. My direct messages are open, so just feel free to reach out to me. Any questions about Workbox, PWA, service workers, cloud, I'm open.
Okay. Before we end, let's take a picture. So, Michael,
Yay.
you how does we have to point like our fingers in the frame? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So you basically like have to look for the other side, yeah. There you go. Yeah. At the top. Okay. If you're okay, I guess it's okay. If maybe we'll just take a screenshot of that. So, once again, thank you, Sir Maxim, for your time. Yeah.
My pleasure. Have a nice evening, folks. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Okay, so before we end, we're going to share some of the events that will be happening very soon. So, let me share my screen. Okay. Yeah. We still have an upcoming event. Where is it? There you go. On August 21, we have the power of micro front ends with Seiji. On August 22, we have SEO for web developers. On August 28, we have real-time web application with SignalR. And also on the 28th, we have containerized deployment for your SPA and API. So if you wanted to have a feel of progressive web apps, we do have a PWA that you can access by visiting app.pwapilipinas.org or getting it through Google Play or Microsoft Store. Yeah, we're also on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We also have an email if you have questions for us, and also a website. So, before we end, we would like to thank our sponsors, AWS, our community partner, OmniQuotient, Angel Hack, React.js Philippines, Google Developer Student Club, AMA Computer College Caloocan. Thank you for sharing our live streams as always. Algo Filipino, Angular Philippines, PhilIT.org, Computer Professionals Union, and Apper.ph for sponsoring our StreamYard for 1 year. And if you also wanted to volunteer, you can send us an email at hi@pwpilipinas.org. Yan. So, ito yung mga partner ganap. Yeah, if you want to be part of a community, another developer community, we have OmniQuotient that you can join. So, you can ask questions or share your code there. So, yun. We also have a new energy nexus, hacking the future of energy. More details on our Facebook page. So ito naman, Michael, can you introduce yung ating build a modern data app?
Okay, thank you, Andre. So you're invited to join the Build a Modern Data App by Data Spots and Angel Hack. This is a hackathon happening on September 3 to 5. So there are lots of prizes to be won, no? So please join bit.ly/pwa-pilipinas-ph for more information. You're welcome, guys, to join this hackathon, no? Using AstraDB as part of your project.
Okay. So, next is Space Apps.
Yan. So this year, no, we celebrate our 10-year anniversary of the NASA's International Space Apps Challenge. So please visit, for more information, please visit the website spaceapps.co to know more about the challenge. So the hackathon will happen October 2 to 3. So join us addressing real-world problems on Earth and space using NASA's free and open data. We have partnered with not 1, not 2, not 3, but 9 space agencies to help you develop those projects. So once again, visit spaceapps.co for more information.
Wow. Okay, and also as mentioned earlier by Maxim, actually he's the one of the organizers for this event. So we have PWA Summit that will be happening on the 6th and 7th of October. So if you wanted to learn more about progressive web apps, there will be probably a boot camp in there. So it's for free. So you can join that and get a badge if you register. So just visit pwasummit.org. The lineup of speakers and topics are already available for you to check out. So visit that. Okay. Yeah, so we want your feedback if you enjoyed tonight's talk. If may natutunan kayo from our speaker na in-invite natin, just fill up this form. So if na-fill up nyo na siya before, fill up nyo siya ulit. So this is for the talk naman. So just visit bit.ly/pwa-form or scan yung QR code na nasa screen. And aside from getting your feedback, you might also get a chance to win yung shirt. This is in partnership. Actually, this is actually sponsored by AWS. So thank you, AWS, for providing us with shirt. So we will be having one winner per draw. So we had our draw previously last August 15. And we have the next draw naman for this week, this August 23. It's another one this August 29. So make sure to fill that up. Kahit na kahit na fill upan nyo siya every talk, kunyari may talk tayo, fill up nyo siya, then after that may talk. So you would also get e-certificates. So we'll be sending yung e-certificates probably very soon. Ayun. So ito yung mga winners nung August 15. So na-contact naman na namin sila, pero congratulations pa din kay Krisha Mercado na nanalo ng PWA Pilipinas AWS t-shirt, tsaka kay Christopher. Thank you goodies naman. So every week pala, so aside sa t-shirt, you will also get to win goodies, no? So 2 winners, isang t-shirt, isang goodies. Ayan. So yun. Ano pa ba? Okay. Ayan. So anyway, make sure to fill that up. So if sana nag-enjoy kayo kahit medyo gabi na and weekday. Ayan. So before tayo magpahinga, at least diba, may bago tayo yung tutunan for tonight. for sure, like marami kayong ina-absorb pa for sure na info. Pero sobrang helpful nito, di ba? Lalo in developing for future web apps. Kasi for sure may in-demand to in the next few months to a few years. So knowing this library will help you make your life easier, lalo na sa web app development. Yan. So may last words ba, Michael? Like anything else? Like reflection, invite, yun.
Na-mind talaga ako kanina. Talagang sabi ko, marami palang mga aspeto dito sa progressive web apps na kinakailangan natin matutunan, no? So, let's continue to listen to our experts, to be educated, no? On how do we develop these PWAs, no? Don't forget na tumuto kayo sa PWA Summit, no? You will learn as well, other talks about PWA, then continue on following us at Facebook, in Twitter, in Instagram, in LinkedIn, in YouTube, no? May YouTube tayo. So,
YouTube, Discord.
Yun na, volunteer po kayo, ha? Volunteer to join us, no? We need your help, guys. We need your help to spread the word about PWA. Ayan. Yun lang aking masasabi ngayon. Nabusog tayo. Nabusog tayo bilang sa thoughts, no? Pati yung mga technique, pati yung mga workbox na yan, no? Grabe.
Taglish na tayo ngayon kasi wala na yung speaker.
Oo.
Na-nosebleed ako kanina eh.
So me too, no? I also nosebleed. Pero okay naman eh, di ba? We learned a lot, no? From our dear speaker. Bira lang yan, no? Bira lang yan na
naman
tayo outside of the country that will lend his time for us, no? Di ba, Andre? Galing naman, no?
Lalo hirap ng time zones. Time zone.
Bali, kaya naman niya.
Kaya medyo ginagabi tayo ngayon eh. Pero, syempre, kung hanggang kaya natin, di ba, dalhin dito, dadalhin natin sila dito.
Kay Pinas.
Magpahinga na kayo, no? Ay, wow. Ano yun? Anong joke yun?
Dadalhin.
Ay, okay. Anyway, ayun lang, no? So once again, thank you. So paki-fill up po yung feedback form para makasama kayo sa raffle. Tsaka makuha kayo ng e-certificate. Tsaka malaman namin kung ano yung opinion nyo about, like, okay ba yung ginagawa namin. Ayan. So, once again, I'm Marisito de Guzman of PW Pilipinas and
Michael Lan.
Yeah. See you again on Saturday. May event tayo sa Saturday.
Okay. See you again on Saturday, guys, ha? In PWA.
Bye-bye. Pilipinas. Bye-bye.
AWS is the world's most comprehensive and broadly adopted cloud platform. Millions of customers trust AWS to power their infrastructure and applications. Organizations of every type and size are using AWS to lower costs, become more agile, and innovate faster. AWS provides on-demand delivery of technology services via the internet with pay-as-you-go pricing. You can use these services to build and run virtually any type of application without upfront costs or ongoing commitments. You only pay for what you use. AWS gives you more services and more features within those services than any other cloud provider. This makes it faster, easier, and more cost-effective to move your existing applications to the cloud and to build anything you can imagine. From infrastructure technologies like compute, storage, and databases, to emerging technologies such as machine learning and artificial intelligence, data lakes and analytics, and Internet of Things. Building on AWS means you can choose the right tool for the job. For example, AWS offers the widest variety of databases that are purpose-built for different types of applications. With AWS, you can leverage the latest technologies to experiment and innovate more quickly. We are continually accelerating our pace of innovation to invent entirely new technologies you can use to transform your business. Like pioneering the serverless computing space with the launch of AWS Lambda, which lets developers run their code without provisioning or managing servers. And AWS built Amazon SageMaker, a fully managed machine learning service that empowers everyday developers and scientists to use machine learning without any previous experience. We are constantly expanding our global network of AWS regions, so you can access AWS services to build and run your applications from anywhere in the world. Each of these regions has multiple availability zones that are physically separated from each other and connected by low latency, high throughput, and highly redundant networking. This makes it easy to design and operate applications that are scalable, fault-tolerant, and highly available. Our infrastructure is built to satisfy the security standards of the most risk-sensitive organizations. You also have access to the AWS Partner Network, which has thousands of systems integrators who specialize in AWS services, and tens of thousands of independent software vendors who adapt their technology to work on AWS. With the largest community of customers across every industry, AWS has unmatched experience and operational expertise you can depend upon for your most important applications and every imaginable use case.